Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Trade Station Masterclass. I'm back. Sorry for the days that we had to cancel Masterclass last week and the week before. I was going through a really bad cold or flu, or I'm not sure what it was, but I'm feeling much better. Glad that I'm back and glad to be here in the Masterclass teaching about TradeStation. Today, we're going to talk about menus and toolbars. And for those that are joining the masterclass, for the first time, my name is Jesus Nava. I'm the Director of Client Training and Education for TradeStation Securities, and it's always fun to talk about TradeStation. I see some activity going on here in the chat from David. He says, I haven't received any texts from masterclass. Am I signed up correctly? David, it's been some time already, but we stopped sending out text messages for the coach alerts. So for anybody that wants to see what's happening, or if there's any cancellations or what the topics are going to be for the week, people would have to go to the landing page over the masterclass where the main page is and see what the alert messages have been. I know that we are revamping, the whole experience for the masterclass. And one of the things that we had to stop doing was, sending out these text messages. So yeah, they're not being sent out anymore. So I'm sorry for that. So again, for scheduling, cancel or last minute cancellations, or if you want to learn or know about the topics that we're going to be covering this week, then just go to the landing page of the masterclass and you're going to find the messages on the top right of the page. Okay, you're very welcome. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. Before we jump into today's topic, here are some important disclosures. Keep in mind that every symbol and idea that I talk about in this presentation is for educational purposes only. It is not a recommendation of TradeStation. Also, that active trading is not suitable for everyone, especially if you trade one of the more risky products like options and futures. Past historical performance is no guarantee of future results. We all need to be aware of that. There's a few links right here in this PowerPoint slide that take you to more disclosure information, to more details. The one that I want you guys to pay attention to is the one that is at the top, www.tradestation.com/important information for additional details. All right. Thank you guys for being here. Let's go ahead and get started. There's no additional information on this PowerPoint, so I'm not going to be sharing it with anybody or with the class today. But I am going to jump over to the TradeStation platform directly. All right, so in this class, what we're going to talk about is the toolbar or menu bar, depending on how you want to call it, right there at the top of every application. Right now, of course, I have a chart application, but you probably noticed that depending on the application you have open, the options at the top are going to be different. Let me demonstrate that here. So this is a chart analysis window. If I go to apps and I click on, let's say, time and sales. So if I put the time and sales here on the right-hand side, the menu right here on the time and sales only has data and settings. So yeah, the items or the options that are going to be listed in your menus are going to be different because some applications have far more functionality than others, and we need a little bit more structure in some applications than others. For example, charting is one of the applications in TradeStation that has the most features, and that's why you have so many different menu items at the top of the chart application. If you've been with TradeStation for a long time, you probably remember the TradeStation platform with a big, long set of toolbar buttons at the very top. There were toolbar buttons that you would recognize if you had been using TradeStation for a while, and these button icons would be, familiar to you. But for somebody that was just learning TradeStation and they look up at a set of toolbar buttons, it's very confusing. So a decision was made that for TradeStation 10, instead of showing you toolbar buttons, they would just give you, a menu bar here with main words that would tell you, what are the options, what are the tools in each one of them. So now we have little drop downs over here that allow you to access, all the app or all the functions and all the editing that you can do or that you were able to do at the very top of TradeStation. So again, every application will have its own menu at the top, and you still have the ability to customize that menu to be exactly what you want it to be. And a lot of times we use certain functions and we find that it's a little bit frustrating when they're difficult to find, and you spend, some time going from menu to menu to know where they are. So rather than having to fish for these functions within the menus, you can modify the menus so that they're more prominent on your view and they're easily accessible. And that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about customizing toolbars so that they're easily accessible. A couple of things that I did on my toolbars and that I did on my TradeStation is that I made sure that the toolbar was visible on all my applications. I'm not sure if you noticed, but when I opened up the time and sales, let me open up the time and sales. And I'm going to open up another chart analysis. And let's go to window, arrange all. So you can see that I have 3 different applications on my screen. At the very top, I have the toolbar visible on all of them. Now that's not that way in TradeStation by default. The default is that you only see the menu bar on the active window. So that setting is somewhere. I'll show you where it is. For a moment I went blank, but here in the view menu, you have a place that says application toolbars. And this is the way that is set by default. It's set to show active. If I set it to show active, notice that it's only visible right here on this left side because that's the one, or that's the window that is active. You don't see the menu bar in time and sales, and I don't see the menu bar either on this other chart on the right. The reason is because I have that option selected, which is the default, to only show the menu bar on the active window. Why did TradeStation choose that option to be the default? So that you would be able to capitalize on all the real estate available on your screen. So if you're not using a particular application, it just collapses the menu bar to show you maybe some more relevant information. But if I were to click on this other chart here on the right-hand side, I'm going to click it once. You can see how the menu bar shows up because now I've made this chart on the right the active window. Does that make sense? I personally don't like the jerkiness of this movement where you click on a window and everything else like rearranges or collapses so that it allows for more space. I like my view to be a little bit more static, depending on where, regardless of where I'm clicking. So I go to the view menu and I say, for my application toolbars, I want my TradeStation to show all of them so that I see that menu bar at the very top of the screen. I can see this being a problem back in the days when we had a resolution that was not very fine, and everything, and you had to be very conscious about what you had on your screen. But nowadays, with these high resolution monitors and high resolution screens, everything in TradeStation is so small that you can arrange pretty much, or visualize everything without it taking up a lot of space. So I don't see it as a big concern, having the menu bar visible on all my application, but it's up to you. That's why it's a checkbox that you check on if you want this or not. Okay, so first of all, I have my application toolbars turned on every single application. And we're not talking about title bar here, but the same functionality of auto hiding when not in use applies to the title bar at the very top of each one of my applications. You see that each one of them has its name. On the right, I see chart analysis. Right here in the middle, I see the time and sales. And on the left, I see my other chart analysis. And as I click from one window to the other, these title bars don't collapse either. You can see that I'm not a fan of TradeStation, showing and pushing things out. So what I did is I went to the file menu. This is in a different location, not in the view menu. But if you go to the file menu and you go to preferences and click on desktop, you're going to find a view tab that controls the application title bar. And by default, the one that is selected is only show the title bar on the active window. So that's why you see the title bars appear and disappear depending on which application you're clicking on. I've set mine to show the title bar on the windows selected above, and I have all the windows checked. So when I click OK, not only do I have a static title bar, I also have a static menu bar, and makes my TradeStation a little less jumpy when I'm, maneuvering from one window to the next. Okay. I'm getting a question here from Nelson. It says, please talk a little bit about the distance of the graph at the right side. When you say the distance, what do you mean exactly, Nelson? You're talking about the spacing in between candles, or I'm not sure what you mean. While you clarify, I'm going to open up a new workspace, so I just leave this open just in case I need to come back. Let me open up a chart analysis window again here. And let's go through different examples of situations where having a specific toolbar or button would make a lot of sense. Okay, the separation, Nelson, and I think Nelson is referring to the space right here to the right-hand side. Same here on the chart on the left, I get some space from the very current candle that's giving me real-time data to the price scale. A lot of traders like to see their bars or their candles against the price scale, and TradeStation charting has this space there by default, and it has 5 spaces. So if you think about this, it's like the space that would take 5 candlesticks. That's the space that's available here on the right. That is controlled by a box that's called space to the right. I'm going to double click on the background so you can access the customized window. So double click on the background of the chart. Go to the general tab. And in the general tab, you find a box that's called space to the right. You can see that it's set to 5. You can change it to anything you want. If you set it to 0, you'll find the candlestick, right against the price scale if that is something that you prefer. And of course, you can set that as a default so that it applies to every new chart analysis you open. It will not apply to things that you have already open. So if you want something that changes everything that you have on your TradeStation, this doesn't do that. For any chart that is already open, you have to go in there individually, go here into space to the right and change it. Okay, so one of the things that you guys may do on your TradeStation is change the time frame on the chart, maybe from daily to 5 minutes to 60 minutes. So let's go ahead and set those time frames as separate buttons here on my toolbar. Otherwise, I would have to go here to time frame and select the time frame that I need. So for example, if I go to daily here, then I have to go back to time frame and then go to 5 minute, then go back to time frame and do 60 minute. So if you find yourself going in there into the time frame little drop down and having to click on something, it would be so much better to have dedicated buttons for those that don't have to go back into the menu and try to find the option that I'm looking for. So how to customize this menu bar or toolbar? I'm going to go to the very end. I'm going to call it the toolbar because that's the actual name. Sometimes I say menu bar, but it's not the menu bar. The menu bar is right here at the top of TradeStation where you see file, edit, view. So that we don't confuse, or confuse you guys, let's go ahead and call the menu bar right here at the top. And what we find inside the application, we'll call it the toolbar. So at the very end of the toolbar, you're going to find a little button. I'm hovering over it, And you can see that it says toolbar options. That should show up automatically for you. Hovering is just putting your mouse pointer right on top of it. It should give you the name of that little button. So this is toolbar options. I'm going to click on it. So it gives me a little menu, and I'm going to click on customize. From the customize dialog, you can pretty much modify anything on that toolbar. And under categories, you're going to find things that are related to the application you have open. So for example, I see time frame in here, but if I do the same thing on an application that does not have time frame, you won't see it. So let me go ahead and show you that. Let me cancel out of this. I'm going to go to this other workspace, and right here on this time and sales, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go to the very end of the toolbar, click on customize, but you can see that time frame is not something that is listed here under categories because it does not apply to the time and sales. So every application will have its own set of categories. That's what I wanted to get to. So over here, I'm going to go back here to customize. And in time frame is the menu that I want some toolbar buttons from. So let's see. I'm going to scroll down. I'm going to use the 5-minute, and I'm going to drag it over here to the very top. So this is the way that you add buttons. You click and drag, and I'm going to put mine right in between time frame and drawing. It doesn't matter that the menu drops because you won't be able to add it there. But as long as you're in between, the time frame and the drawing buttons, that is going to add that single toolbar button at the top of my toolbar. And now that little button will change my chart to 5-minute every time I click on it. So let's say, for example, I have 60 minutes as my other button. I'll put it up there. And then I'll do daily. I'll put it up there. So notice that at the very top, I've added 3 new toolbar buttons. And I do have to click on apply for those changes to take effect. Now, those 3 buttons are going to be added on every chart analysis toolbar that's already open. That's one of the nice features. So if I go over here to my first workspace where I have my 2 charts on my time and sales, you can see how the buttons show up here on this chart, and they show here on this other chart. So that type of changes do apply to, all the applications you have open, and it does that automatically for you. So Nelson is asking, if you want to set up, for example, 240-minute in the list, how can I do it? We'll talk about that too. Let's do that next. So I clicked on this second workspace. I think my trade station is wanting to, it's kind of slowing down very much. Let me get rid of this time and sales. All right. What's going on with the markets? The markets are down, almost 500 points down. Let's close this workspace. And let's close one of these charts. Okay, so let's suppose that, so what I was pointing to is like, now I have 3 buttons. So if I click on any of these buttons, notice how quickly I'm able to switch my chart back and forth between them. So if that's you who is switching your time frames of your charts at all times and you want to add those additional buttons on your toolbar, it becomes very handy. If you wanted something custom, like for example, Nelson's asking, what if I want, a button that does 240 minutes? For that, we have to create a custom button. Now, let me show you how to do that because I think it's part of the same topic, and it's important that we all know how to do that. In order for us to create a custom button, we need to think about the commands that are available for you to use in those buttons. I'm going to show you how to access a list of commands in TradeStation. I'm going to go to the command line, and the command line can be pulled up by pressing any key on the keyboard. You can press a space bar. Any key on the keyboard will pull up the command line. Because what I want from the command line is this little drop down. Not the drop down here that gives you, the commands you've typed in recently, but the one right next to it, the second button. It says history and commands list. because this little button gives you the ability to go to other commands. And when you go to other commands, it opens up documentation about every single command that it's there for you to use. Okay? So use this as a reference as to see all the different things you can create. What I want though is I want to create a macro. So I'm going to go here. I'm probably going to show you this very quickly, and every macro is different. I do a class all together about macros and toolbar buttons, but that's a separate class. But over here, I'm going to go to the view menu, go to shortcuts, and click on macros. And in macros, I'm going to create a macro. It's going to be a command line macro. And my command is going to be 240 MIN. That's my command. That's similar to if I were typing it inside of the command line. I'm typing it down here, 240 space MIN. When I click next, the name of this macro is 240 min. I'm not sure if I can start the name with a number. No. So no number. So I'm going to call it min 240. No confirmation, no beep, and finish. So once you have a macro created, you can add it as a toolbar. So let me go back in here. Same toolbar. I'm going to go to the very end. Click on customize. But instead of being in time frame, I'm going to scroll down and go to my command line macros. And one of the things that TradeStation hasn't done is we haven't added the ability to change the icon for this macro, which is a shame, because I know in older versions of TradeStation, we could change the image of the icon. Not here yet. I think eventually TradeStation will add that customization ability, but now I see the macro here, min 240, which I'm going to add here to next to my other buttons. Maybe I add it here next to 60, which is, 240 is less than daily. I'm going to apply it, and that's it. But now when I click on that custom macro, it turns my chart into 240 minutes. You see that? Right here on the top of the chart. So yes, you can customize any of the buttons right here on the toolbar and make them a little bit more prominent. Another example, a lot of times we want to draw horizontal lines. We want to draw, some trend lines. So I'm going to add those two buttons here to my toolbar. Rather than having to go to drawing, horizontal line, click on this, go to drawing again, horizontal line, and click on this again, I can have a button that does or turns that on automatically for me. Let me go ahead and go here to customize toolbar again. Notice that you have a drawing menu. For drawing, I'm going to click on horizontal line, put it right here next to drawing. And I may want to do a trend line too. And I may want to have this snap mode. Snap mode is a button that I use a lot. If I want my trend lines to be right at the prices of the candle, that's something that I want to do all the time. But now instead of having to go here to drawing and go to a big menu like this, I can just click on the little button for horizontal line and then click. That gives me the line. Click, click. If I want a trend line, I just click on the trend line, go here, and then draw my trend line. And if I want, snap mode is useful because if you notice when I drew this trend line, I missed the top of this candle. You guys saw that? So it's kind of a little bit too high. Now I can adjust the trend line again, or I can redraw it. Let me go ahead and redraw it. But this time I'm going to click on snap mode, because snap mode, if you click on any or in the vicinity of the line, let me go ahead and click on trend line. It attaches to that point. So that's very easy for me to pinpoint the highest high of one bar and the highest high of the other bar without having, to be a little bit precise. in my clicking. So that's something useful. So we added those toolbar buttons there. And then you can just, the snap mode button is a button that you can click on and off very easily. Okay. All right. I'm getting a question here from Henry right there in the chat. How can I get rid of the crosshairs and just have the arrows? So on the newer versions of TradeStation, we added the crosshair that follows your mouse pointer. If you want to disable that, just go to the settings button and go to preferences. It's in the chart analysis preferences dialog. And what you do is just check this box that says display crosshair lines with down click only. So they'll go away as you're moving around the chart, and they'll only show up when you click and hold your mouse pointer. Okay. Another thing that I find a lot of people use is percent change chart right here. So let's go and see if we can add some buttons there. I'm going to go to customize, go to style. Now for percent change chart, we only have the main menu. We don't have the individual options, for example, enable or disable. We don't have them. However, if you do work with percent change charts a lot, clicking here and turning that on and off, it's quicker than going to style, percent change chart, and enable from this menu. I really don't like this structure of menus where it branches out in other menus, because if I lose my spot and I move away from the menu, the menu collapses again and goes away, and I have to start from the beginning one more time. But if percent change chart is something you use a lot, just click over here and you have the options of percent change chart. What else? Let's go over here to customize. So yeah, drawing, studies, same thing applies to studies or adding studies or strategies. To be able to add studies specifically, yeah, you need a custom macro for that. For example, the same way we did this custom macro to change the time frame to 240 minutes, you can have a specific macro that adds, like for example, an exponential moving average, or that adds a Bollinger Band, and have those macros specifically created to do so. Okay, let's go here to scaling. Yeah, some users of TradeStation claim that sometimes if they come up here at the bottom, they don't see these increase, decrease bar spacing, zoom in, zoom out, or even the reset button. If you guys go here to the customize dialog, you have the scaling button, and you have a reset scaling range right here that you can use. So what I recommend you guys do is visit this dialog and go from category to category to see if you find any options or any buttons that you use very frequently. And rather than having to go into the menus and try to fish for that specific function, you can just bring in the toolbar button right here to the top of your application. Under apps, you're going to find new app commands that allow you to not have to use the apps menu right here on the top. So the new chart is something that sometimes I find handy. If I put it up here at the very beginning of the toolbar, every time I click on it, I would get a chart. Well, that's kind of simple, right? So if you do this many times, rather than having to go to apps and click on chart analysis, apps and chart analysis, you can just add a button here that opens up a chart analysis window for you. Style, data. Can think of anything that you would find useful. So again, I recommend you go through all the different properties, read all the different commands that are here, because it's going to be very useful for somebody that's always in the menus trying to find stuff. Here we have some platform toolbar buttons. For example, let's see. Click the range all. And of course, you have the command line macros and order entry macros that pretty much allow you to create any sort of macro and tie it in with a toolbar button. If you're done, doing all your customization, no need to save. Everything is automatically applied to TradeStation. All the buttons that I added up here are already part of my chart application. So when I open up a new chart application, it should come up with all those buttons. If you want to reset the button, the toolbar altogether, just go here to, again, the very end of the toolbar, and you can reset the toolbar, and this will be set to default. All your changes will be lost. So it's asking if you do really want to reset the toolbar. I'm going to say okay, and notice that my toolbar changes are gone. Another thing that you can do, and that's something that I'm going to go here into the customize dialog for, is to look at other toolbars. In charting, we have something called the classic toolbar. If I enable it, it's going to look very similar to the one that you previously used on TradeStation 9.5. So if you're still a fan of that toolbar with only toolbar buttons, you can just enable it here, and you can see that what it looks like. It's just a line with different buttons, and that's essentially what 9.5 had. If you want one toolbar over the other, you can just uncheck the charting tools if that's what you want. And we have a separate drawing tool for charting if you want to see that as well. If I click on it, you can see that it opens up a drawing toolbar on the left-hand side. Some users find that convenient, especially if you use a lot of drawing tools. If you only use a couple of drawing tools, I don't see a point of having that vertical toolbar on the left with a couple dozen of buttons you're not going to be using. So if it's just horizontal lines and trend lines, then maybe you're better off adding those two buttons to the top of your toolbar if that's what you want to do. Okay. You can also create a new toolbar. A new toolbar is something that you create from scratch. So if you don't like any of the toolbars that TradeStation supplies, you can have your own toolbar with the buttons that you want. So I can call this my chart toolbar. Notice that it opens up right here at the top. So I can uncheck my charting tools, and then I can start adding buttons from the commands. So whatever those buttons I want, I can just put them up here. There we go. So we start adding buttons up here. So let me go back here into toolbars, customize, toolbars. This one right here, I'm going to delete. I don't need it. But if you wanted to start something from scratch, you can. And that's it. That's pretty much the information that I had for you guys. How to go into the menus, how to customize your toolbars. On the options tab of the customize window, you can enable or disable the tooltips that show up when you hover over buttons. I find them useful, so they're on my machine. And you also have the ability to have large icons if you want that on your screen. Not a fan of large icons, so, but if, if you're having difficulty looking at or identifying the buttons on your TradeStation, maybe you can change the size as well. Are there any questions? Do we have any questions so far about this functionality? Anything that you're thinking about that you want to do and you're still not very clear on, we can talk about that right now. Let me know right here in the chat. Oh, there's one more thing that I wanted to say before letting you guys go. If you go to the view menu, you also have something called, if you go to the platform toolbars, the one that is enabled is a menu bar, but you also have a main toolbar that is hidden, and it's very similar to a toolbar we had on older versions of TradeStation. So this is the main toolbar again. Where is it? Go to view, platform toolbars, main toolbar. And what it does, it includes buttons like open workspace or new workspace. It has the button to print a workspace. And it also has this locking menu that is not available anywhere else on TradeStation. So this locking mechanism allows you to lock certain order entry tools. So for example, if you know you're not going to be trading for some time and you want to lock your matrix, you can just click here and it locks order entry on the matrix, so that if you have it on the screen, looking at the prices, you don't have your cat, accidentally jumping on your keyboard and trying to place your trades. I always say that if I let my pets trade for me, I would probably get better trades, right? So, but you can see all the locks that you can put into any application that takes orders or where you can manage orders. So you can lock the basket order, market depth, matrix, trade manager, the trade bar, anything. Or you can lock them all or unlock them all or disable all strategy automation. So if strategy automation is your thing and you want a quick way to disable multiple strategy or automated strategies at the same time, you can do it right here on this lock button. Again, lock button is not something that is available elsewhere. So you have to go to the view menu, platform toolbars, and make sure that you have the main toolbar turned on. Okay, let me go back here and turn it off since I don't need it at the moment. Okay, I don't see any more questions in the chat, so I'm going to assume that everybody got their questions answered. I want to say thank you for your time. Thank you for being here. I'm going to switch over here to the disclosures, which are, again, required by our regulators. And again, my name is Jesus Nava, Director of Client Training and Education here at TradeStation Securities. A pleasure to be here. I hope to see you in a future class. Goodbye, everyone.